I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. 3-year anniversary of the Russian aggression war on Ukraine. I'm here with Denis Storjuk from the Friends of Kiev, and we're going to have a bit of a chat on this 3 years. 3 years this has been going on now.
Yeah, Kelowna Stands With Ukraine, yeah. Yeah, our organization was founded exactly 3 years ago on that day. This is terrible, what happens. And we had high hopes for President Trump in the office. And
Is the recent days, and I just watched the press conference with him and Emmanuel Macron, President Emmanuel Macron.
Today, yeah.
They're talking a lot about peace, which we haven't talked about for a long time, right? I don't know where like most people sit in Ukraine with this, because it seems like they're not involving
Opinion change.
Zelensky much, but there is opinion change. Go ahead.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, the prevailing mood in Ukraine was we're going to win the war.
Yeah.
All the world helping us, Europe, United States, Russia is kind of gaining, like losing territory. So
Ukrainians taking back some territories. Yeah.
Exactly. 2022 we were taken back. A year ago it was kind of on the fence. What's happening? Like it's not going anywhere.
It's kind of like stuck, and they've been saying that a lot of military people say that it's just kind of like no advance either way. Right?
It was a year ago, but now, last year, basically we're losing territory. Not much. Like if you look at the grand scheme of scheme, but we constantly losing. Russia constantly advances, and the main problem we running out of resources, and
mainly that being men too. No?
Manpower and equipment, ammunition, shortage of armor, everything, and people start to change their mind, and I think most of Ukrainians now are thinking about the peace or ceasefire rather than winning.
I know, and a lot of people will say, especially if you're not involved in the conflict, that nobody wants to negotiate. But every war ends with negotiation. Exactly. It doesn't matter which war throughout history. Every war ends with negotiation. That doesn't matter if it was the Japanese with the Americans, or the Germans with the Americans, or the Russians, or whatever. Every war ends with negotiation, and until you come to the table, you can't negotiate, right?
Exactly. But our position was very opposite to position of Russia. Russia just wanted basically to change the power in Ukraine, or occupy Ukraine, or do something dramatic. Ukraine wanted to get all the territory back, and according to President Zelensky, back to the border 30 years ago. And right now it seems that opinion changes. We just want the peace, whatever it is. But at the same time, Ukrainians want more like a ceasefire, not a permanent treaty where we give territory to Russia. This is out of question. But just kind of ceasefire, and we will figure it out later.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Is there any numbers that you know of how many lives are lost? Like, I mean, I hear different numbers all the time, up to 2 million on both sides. And you know what I mean? Then you hear different numbers.
I think 2 million is total number of losses, but it's not mean people dead.
So casualties and dead?
Yeah, like you mean severely wounded and so on, like people that could not find anymore.
Right.
So in this regard, the actual number of people killed in the war, I think somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million.
That's on both sides?
Both sides combined, yeah.
And I guess even for Ukraine, the bigger is the destruction of all the cities and the economy and all the industry and everything. It's just kind of like, the Russians have been attacking infrastructure.
Yeah, right? But I would say main cities that are on Ukraine controlled territory, like Kiev, Dnipro, Zaporizhia. There are some, there is damage to infrastructure, mainly power stations, stuff like that, but mostly industry is working. But it's more working for defense So economy itself, of course, collapsed. Like if
So it's a
only-
wartime economy kind of thing.
pretty much. And only half of the pre-war population is actively working in Ukraine. Many people fled, many people on occupied territories. So economy is, with help from Europe and States, economy is kind of floating. But of course, we lost a lot of big cities. But I would not say that in like Kiev there is a lot of destruction. It's not the case. There is attacks every day, but one more building is demolished.
So it's not like a relentless attack like the Second World War where
Yeah,
they bombed whole cities
like
down.
of course, cities that are close to the front line,
lines, yeah.
they completely demolished. Like Mariupol was demolished in the beginning. Now all the cities that are on the front line, it just ruins, nothing else.
So where are you have you been back to Kiev at all in 3 years?
No, but one of our directors was delivering a pickup truck that we purchased here. He was back there in June last summer.
So any communication with people in the occupied territories with your people at all?
No,
communication in and out of there?
No, it's dangerous, mostly for people in occupied territories.
Right, but if they're talking, then it probably causes them.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. They will be considered spies and so on and shot.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And then last time you and I talked, you said there's not a lot of men left in the city of Kiev, though.
Yeah. Well, compared to pre-war, it's kind of deserted streets. And now the biggest problem approach in Ukraine to mobilization, people basically grabbed on the streets by military.
Just kind of conscripted right there, drafted on the spot.
Conscripted, on the spot. Yeah. And that's a big difference to what happens in Russia, where other than attempt of mobilization that happened 2.5 years ago, they just raise payment. Yeah. And the payment for people that are coming from small villages is just huge. It's more than they can earn in their whole life, just for signing.
So basically, they're just being bribed to go to the front. And
and it's mostly poor people. Like basically the number of Russian soldiers fighting from big cities like Moscow or St. Petersburg is minimal.
So is this what's happened in the last few days a sign of hope for people in Ukraine? And for you were saying kind of like, it's time to talk about peace?
Well, that was the rhetoric of Trump from the very beginning, from the election. But events of last 2 weeks are completely devastating to Ukraine. And people in Ukraine are very upset and very about what happens with like this negotiation between American administration and Russian administration, when Ukraine was not invited, Europe was not invited. Okay, we don't know what they talked to, but then this last thing when Trump demanded from Ukraine basically $500 billion in mineral resources for what was given as a grant rather than loan, and what he calls the Zelensky dictator, and that he has 4% of population support. That's completely Russian propaganda that he get it from, and that's very discouraging for people that he falls to that. And but it could be a play, with Putin. But when they already did 3 approaches to Ukrainian government, give us mineral resources. And I just published on my Facebook the article where actual amount of American help to Ukraine that was actually delivered, military aid, is only 27 billion. And Trump claims it's 500 billion.
Yeah, I've seen those numbers. I've seen numbers where Zelensky's, he said, though, he's gotten 100 billion.
That's what he said. But that's what was kind of
Is
approved.
that military aid?
No,
or
that's what was approved to give to Ukraine, but not given yet.
Yeah.
What was actually delivered, 27 billion. And Trump wants 500 billion in what was supposed help to an ally.
Yeah. The numbers are all over the place for sure.
Yeah,
Like, it's-
numbers all over the place,
Yeah.
and the whole rhetoric, like give us money and maybe we will consider to protect you. And Zelensky pretty much agreed to this negotiation, but he doesn't want maybe. Just give us pretty clear security guarantees and so on. And Trump does not want to do it, so we really worry about what will happen.
It's really
next.
hard. It's really hard to play armchair when the rhetoric and the talk changes every couple minutes. So too,
Exactly.
and the other
that's
thing
true,
is
yeah.
like Trump does know that Putin needs to somehow, for Russia, look like he won, right? Do you know what I mean? They've even been announcing that they've won already. So, which is a good sign in a way that if he's saying they've won, that maybe they're ready to stop.
Exactly.
Right?
That was our hope when it all started, this negotiation and so on, that, we understand Trump says something that Putin likes and Ukrainians don't like, but maybe just a play, kind of, because I realistically think the main reason for this war was just Putin's ambitions, basically.
Right.
So Trump plays to his ambitions, and if it will lead to good peace terms, that's okay. But what happened next is...
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad thing about it is, like, Putin's ego. Obviously, I mean, and the same thing he played in the Second World War, right? He talked. He wasn't in it, but I mean, he talked like the Russians won the war. Do you know what I mean? Like when he tells the people of Russia that they won the Second World War. Right?
But that was Soviet propaganda all the times, and it was Russian propaganda. They play a lot on that. And realistically, I would say, if you consider what they teach in the United States, they also say that United States plays a major role in that. So that's that's normal. But you see, the problem is that it's not Russia who was one of the winning countries in the war. It was Soviet Union, and Russia,
which was everybody, right, including Ukraine.
Including Ukraine.
Yeah,
And
Poland, everybody.
Russia
right?
was only half of the Soviet Union.
I mean, that's the sad thing about this whole war. It's like a lot of these Ukrainians and Russians, that, like, they're family, right? Like, I mean, a lot of that is cross-border, right?
Like, that's very different compared to World War II, when it was German, completely different nation, different language, different culture invaded. It was clear who is the enemy. And here, when families are split apart, like I have, for example, friends here in Canada from Russia, and they call to their relatives or close friends to Russia, and they said that they like zombie. They could not talk. Like people, Russian people here in Canada, many of them understand what really is going on. They call back to Russia.
And they're told a different story.
Completely. Like they just could not even find common ground, That's propaganda machine is just crazy.
So you and I can't solve anything because we're here, but I guess you can tell the people what, the people that in Kiev and in different parts of Ukraine, what they're feeling right now, and I guess where their hopes and dreams are.
Well, the main thing, they want this to be over as soon as possible. And first of all, majority, more than 50%, still support President Zelensky. What Trump says is complete lie. Because there is just no alternative. Like everybody understands the election during war is nonsense, and there is no.
Once they have peace, then they can start doing elections and everything. Right?
So many people are unhappy with him, but they still think he's a leader at the moment, at least. And of course, when the war will be over, most likely he will lose the election. But most people just hope for peace. For some kind of resolution, for the border to be open, because now it's closed for men. There is a ridiculous situation. Russia did not close the border, by the way. Ukraine closed the border for the men. Like there are
just so men can't leave, they have to go fight, right?
Yeah. So there are many Ukrainians in Canada. Like, for example, we have a kid who is 17-year-old in Kelowna. And his passport is expiring, and he could not obtain new passport because he will be 18 by the time, and for that he need to go back to Ukraine.
And he can be conscripted.
Exactly, right?
Because they just changed that too. They changed it from 25 to 18.
But but
basically a death sentence for him.
Yes, And the biggest problem is that we even did the petition with Tracy Gray in December to the parliament that basically he does not need the passport when he is in Canada. He does not need to travel and so on. But the problem is he could not extend his work permit without valid passport. And it's completely in Canadian power kind of IRCC just to extend the work permit on the
And he
passport.
can't get asylum, basically. I mean, he's basically
No.
being sent back to
No,
a war he
no,
probably
they
doesn't
don't
wanna-
even consider it. Like many people, so that's
That
something
still blows your mind, right?
yeah, like something that blows my mind as Canadian. I'm half Ukrainian, half Canadian. Left half. I was living half of my life in Ukraine, half in Canada. But you know, we have this huge Ministry of Immigration. The budget is $6 billion a year, right? About $500 million is spent for citizenship, visas, and so on. 5.5 billion a year is spent for attracting immigrants to Canada. So the goal is half a million people every year should come to Canada as immigrants because we have demographic problem and so on. Right? We have 300,000 of Ukrainians in Canada already. Some of the best people in the world, 90% are working, paying taxes, their families here, they establish, they learn the language and so on. And their biggest problem here now, they could not get immigration. Their visas are expiring, they're in despair what to do, they have nowhere to go back. Many of them is from occupied territories. And we petition the government all the time. Just give them immigration. Right.
That's kind of like so puzzling.
Yeah, you know, like
Maybe it's better if they go across the border, come here illegally, and then they'd be.
I don't know, but you see, we have 300,000 people. That's half of the goal, annual goal. Just give them permanent residence in like 1 week, all of them. And the goal of the government for half of the year is solved, and we can save like $3 billion by doing that.
And you said Tracy Gray is trying to help with this?
Yeah. She submitted petition in December. We are going to start another online petition with West Kelowna MP. Hopefully get all Canada attention to that. It's just ridiculous. You know?
Because we have a young boy.
Yeah, but not only boys. There are, like, for example, there are many men who were out of country when the war started. They came to Canada with their families. 3 years ago, our federal government was very fast. They gave 1 million visas in like a few months. Yeah. They had no problem with bureaucracy at the time. And they invited all these people to Canada. They're here now, and they don't know where they are, basically. They're losing their status. They pay crazy money to immigration lawyers, like $5,000-$10,000, just to have a chance to submit on one of the programs for immigration. They're hardworking people. They pay taxes. People who come here from, Afghanistan, Palestine, and so on, they go right away on welfare, on social services. Ukrainians don't do that because they have work permit. They don't come here as refugees. They come as workers. And Canada officially supports Ukraine. Justin Trudeau is in Kyiv right now.
Yeah, I know. I saw the speeches he made. He's giving more money. He said, he's given Russian frozen assets and some more military aid. And then he says he's a friend of Kiev and says that the fight's with us. So then I don't understand then why we have Ukrainians living here right now. That it seems like just a stroke of a pen.
Exactly.
To fix that.
And we will save a lot of money. You know, in our budget.
They're contributing to society here already.
Exactly. And they already settled, established. You know, all this, like immigrants who come here, they need settlement service, they need social services, they may settle or not. These people already settled who was not able to, who did not like Canada and so on, they already left long time ago. They're back in Europe or maybe even Ukraine.
And maybe you can help just for people, a lot of people don't understand what Ukraine was. Like, it's a beautiful country, right? Like it's one of the most fertile, resource-rich countries in all of Europe, right? Like the soil in Ukraine is some of the best. So they were actually selling that soil, right?
Yeah, but like when Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, my idea at this moment was that, okay, we had 15 republics in Soviet Union, now we have 15 independent countries, and there could be competition between them who will grow faster, who will become kind of great, rich country faster. And Ukraine struggled for some time, but last 10, 15 years, Ukraine grew really fast, like economy, industry. People started to live better. And I personally think that was one of the reasons for Russian invasion, because Ukrainians were giving bad example to Russians. They were showing that in democratic country, without dictator like Putin, you can actually prosper even without oil and gas, right? And that was bad example. So in the beginning of invasion, like many Russian soldiers who came to Ukraine, they were just shocked by how wealthy people live. You know, like when they get into abandoned houses, there were many kind of videos when they were just shocked that we don't
Modern,
live in Russia
modern,
like that. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, Ukraine was great country, and even many people who came to Canada 3 years ago, 2 years ago, they were saying, well, Canada is behind, substantially behind in technologies, in kind of style of life, and so on, behind Ukraine.
You think there's a candlelight vigil? Let's talk about that for sure. There's a candlelight
Yeah.
vigil tonight at the
5 p.m.
sales
5 p.m. No, but City Hall.
City Hall. There's a candlelight vigil for anybody that wants to go out and support the Ukrainians and this community and Ukraine itself. That candlelight vigil goes tonight at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, 5 o'clock we start. We have speeches. We'll have Tracy Gray. We have city councillors, and about 5:45, 6 we will have actual minute of silence with candles and all of that. It's big event, and it's very important for Ukrainians because support that locals, Kelownians, are shown. Actually, I would say that compared to other people, other cities of Canada and United States, Kelowna was one of the most supportive people, one of the most supportive cities. Like based on our size of population, the number of people and support we received per capita was one of the biggest. And I would like to thank everyone. Last few years, people start to forget or it become old news. But the original 3 years ago, the support we received, donations, everything, kind words, volunteers, was just great. So today, I would invite everyone, please come to show your support. It's very important for people here. And this footage coverage goes to
what
Ukraine
it shows
as well.
in Ukraine as well.
Yeah. So people send to their relatives, friends, and so on, and it shows people of Ukraine that Kelowna, small city in the middle of nowhere for them, supports them.
Yeah. How big is the community here for the Ukrainian
Over
community?
1,000 people.
Yeah.
And people continue to come. Well, you know, some people landed in Manitoba or Saskatchewan, and you know, Ukraine is a warm country. It's not Russia, so it was hard for them, and they were started to
It's
search.
like they landed in Russia.
exactly. In Siberia.
I worked in Winnipeg for a long time.
Yeah. So we have people coming here right now, not directly from Ukraine because the program closed a year ago, but from.
This is more similar to the climate
exactly.
here. Kelowna is
That's
more
the
similar.
reason.
Kind of like Switzerland too. Like, I mean, the climate is more temperate, right?
Yeah, and people realize it's more expensive, the life here, rental and so
Winnipeg,
on. Yeah, but they still want to come because they're hardworking people. Okay, it's more expensive. We'll just work more. What's the problem? We'll take second job, you know. But we want to live.
That is the Ukrainian way for
exactly.
sure, right? Like,
yeah.
So if there is peace, and hope there's peace, will you go back or visit or?
Of course I will. Yeah. Will visit. Yes.
Do you have property there still, or?
No. But my uncle still lives in Kyiv.
Yeah.
And I just restored my Ukrainian citizenship just before the war started in Edmonton consulate. I was lucky because now it would be impossible.
You've been out for a long time though.
Oh
right?
yeah, 25 years ago.
25 years ago.
I officially left Ukraine, immigrating to Canada. So all my paperwork in Ukrainian authorities was registered at the time immigrating to Canada. And but I was able to restore my citizenship. And actually, my two kids that were born here in Kelowna General Hospital, they were able to obtain Ukrainian citizenship as well.
Yeah.
So they're dual citizens now, but they could not go to Ukraine because they'll be drafted right away.
Yeah, it's we all have a story, right? Like we all have you know, in the European nations, you know, like a lot of them share similar, like, I mean, a lot of those people are still from the Second World War and from, you know, various, you know, conflicts there. Like, I mean, and it's good to see some of those nations starting to do better. Like you said, Ukraine was doing better, you know, Poland and Hungary and a lot of Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic now, and Slovak, and tons of those nations are, you know, finding their independence and doing different things, right?
And that was happening in Ukraine. That was happened in Georgia in 2008 when Russia invaded. Completely same reason. Georgians started to live too well in democratic country. That's bad example for Russians.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. And I would suggest just get some numbers together. Just try to envision the scope of this war. This is the largest war that is going on probably after Vietnam War or even after World War II.
Well, if you think about if we talk about those numbers and the death toll, it's got to be one of the largest conflicts since the World War II, right? Especially in that period of time. Like,
Exactly,
you know,
it's you know, it's important to understand that the people that are dying, they are very similar in culture. So, you know, like when there is, I don't know, the war between Iran and Iraq, for example, was 40 years ago. It's hard to understand the reasoning, you know, like why people are fighting. It's religious thing, you know, the different kinds of Islam and so on. So for Canadians, it's harder to understand what's going on. Between, like what happens in Ukraine, Ukrainian culture is very similar. Actually, Ukrainian culture is one of the cultures that form Canadian culture. Like it's a third leading nation after English and French that established Canada, especially Western Canada, right? So, and many people here have one of their relatives back from Ukraine, one of the ancestors, I mean. So Ukrainian culture is very similar. Our way of thinking is very similar. Our religion is very similar. And just people like you, basically, are dying there with no way out.
Yeah. And it's not like they have a choice either, right?
Yeah, but the craziest thing that strikes me for all the 3 years is that the number of official allies of Ukraine, all European countries, United States, Canada, the sheer power of these countries is huge. It's like in GDP, it's 100 times more than Russia. Like Russian GDP is less than California, you know, and it's huge allied power. And what gets actually to Ukraine is like peanuts. Like the actual U.S. help that was received by Ukraine is 27 billion, not 500 billion.
Yeah, those numbers are just baffling because so many different numbers that are like, you know, Trump saying 500 billion or 350 billion, and then, you know, like it's just like it's.
Yeah, but you know, like for example, a year ago, there was huge armor, like there were no artillery cartridges in Ukraine. Artillery, you know, like every one artillery shot we did to Russian position was responded by 10 shots from them. So even if you don't think about the numbers, money, dollars, anything, just how the pretty weak economy-wise country like Russia, how do they get much more equipment, much more armor than Ukraine that is backed by pretty much most of the world?
The Western free world.
Yeah, how is it possible? It just baffles me. Like if there would be real political will to help Ukraine, really help Ukraine, not just let it struggle a little bit more, you know, the war will be over a long time ago. And it's still not late. No. It's still not late. Like what we hear from our friends on the front lines, yeah, manpower is a problem. But why is it a problem? Because so many people don't want to serve in the army on the front line and desert because they don't see the chance to win, you know, because they don't see
it
actual
as a death sentence. Yeah,
they see it as a death sentence. They don't see actual support from Western power. When Ukraine was gaining territory back in 2022, there was no problem with manpower. People were enlisted to army because they were feeling on the winning side and so on. So if the Ukraine start to get real help in equipment, military equipment, and artillery supplies and so on, I'm sure the problem of manpower will go away because we will win quickly, efficiently. People will go to army just to be on the winning side. It's completely different than sitting in the trenches and waiting when another artillery shell will hit you. Like we had one of the veterans here who was on the front line back in 22, who came to Kelowna, and he was part of the advancing force that was reclaiming back Ukrainian territory. He said the mood was great in the troops. Like everybody wanted to be in this army divisions that were gaining this territory. It's completely, like when you play, I don't know, soccer or hockey, one thing is be on the losing side and another thing on the winning side. Morale is completely different.
Yeah. And I know that there's less attention, political tension on Ukraine, the Ukraine war right now because of, what happened in Israel and the Gaza Strip. That's kind of dominated the headlines. And it's allowed politicians to kind of not really kind of focus on it. But I mean, the reality is the amount of death and atrocity that's happening in Ukraine is just...
It's incomparable to Gaza. That's the thing. And
Yeah.
Gaza is Palestine is an ongoing problem for 60, 70 years. If for another year or two, nothing will happen.
Not to say that that's not tragic in itself.
I
but
know,
I mean,
of course, but it's not,
it's like-
not comparable in the
it's-
size and importance.
And just the length, 3 years. Again, I think that's what people really
And-
need to
and
understand.
Russia-
The World War II was 5 years.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? Like we're getting close to
Ha-
like the length of time
Yeah.
that and this is major conflict. This isn't like when Afghanistan, which was a 20-year war, but I mean it was skirmish. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like an all-out fighting. It was they would go around and they get into like mostly IEDs and stuff like that. This is a full-on battle.
It's full on, and the most important thing that Russia, one of the military powers of the world, is an aggressor there. And if you consider why we have Canadian military, why we have US military, European military, it's Russia and China. There are no other real threats in the world. And Ukraine take half of the threat to itself. And like, for example, what happens in Gaza, neither Israel or Palestinians are threat to Canada or United States.
Right.
It's
That's
their problem, and it has a
kind
deep
of contained there.
Yeah, and there is no good, easy resolution. But Russia is a threat to Canada. We have common border in the Arctic, and the Arctic is...
Most people forget that.
Yeah, I don't know how.
No. It is one of our biggest borders with Russia.
Yeah, and if Russia takes over Ukraine, okay, it will be on the border with NATO countries, with Poland and so on, first of all. And second, in its glory, Russia can decide, well, we have full claim of Arctic and probably we need some Canadian islands, and Nunavut and Newfoundland is a good...
And they're active up there. They've been active up there for a while.
Exactly.
Because they have nuclear icebreakers and they have nuclear submarines, and we have neither.
Yeah, and people don't think about it.
No. Again, the Friends of Kiev tonight.
Kelowna Stands With Ukraine.
Kelowna Stands With Ukraine, and that's at 5 o'clock at City Hall. If you want to go out and show your support, that'd be great. And then and all support all the time too, right? Just this, till we can get a peaceful resolution to this. I mean, 3 years. How many people have sacrificed their lives for this already? This
Hundreds
aggression
of thousands,
from the Russians,
hundreds
right?
of thousands, and it's the best people of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like people who
The young men that like
young
mostly,
men, people who love their country, who want to save their country. They know what happened in Russian occupied territories, all the horror that's happening there. And Russian army is not acting like army, civilized army.
And I shared with you before we started that my mother was also fought the Russians in the Hungarian Revolution. She was, again, 19 years old, throwing Molotov cocktails at Russian tanks, and before she escaped in the Hungarian Revolution. So the Russians have shown aggression many, many times.
It was horrible. I read about what happened in Budapest in 1956. They were just bombarding it with artillery. That's Russian tactics. Bombard with artillery to raise it. you know. And when they say they liberated another village in Ukraine, liberated, it means they razed it completely to the ground.
Yeah.
And they liberated 0 people there because people either fled or were killed. So that's how liberators work. And the most, like the propaganda in Russia, it's just horrible. It really turns people to zombies. People really believe in that.
Yeah. I
And
mean, the media there is controlled, and they get the message that they're
and
they're
the
told,
worst
right?
thing that they're pretty active in Canada too. Like I'm a part of Russian speaking Facebook groups, and although I think so many people there are not really in Canada, they somewhere in Russia, just influencers. But
Yeah.
there are many people, Russian people, actually living in Canada that believe in this bullshit. And from one hand, they kind of live in the country that supports Ukraine, and from the other hand, they against it and they think that Russia is right and they're killing Nazis in Ukraine. It's that's so much messed up what's happening right now. I actually even met people like when I was wearing this hat in downtown Kelowna, I met people who were saying, "Oh, Ukraine had biological weapon. Russia is right invading Ukraine." You know, like local people. So people, some people are brainwashed here. Like, thank God it's minority. It's minority, but
People
it's
find
still
rabbit
the
holes
fact.
and they go down these rabbit holes,
Exactly.
and they kind of live
Exactly.
in those echo chambers
Yeah,
too, right?
like
So,
most of locals support us. It's too bad they don't actively support at the moment. It's it's too bad. It's old news, but at least they tell me they support
well,
Ukraine, and yeah,
I mean, I did watch the press conference with the president of France and the president of the United States talking about. They said, I mean, Macron was nodding as well because Macron tried to broker a peace deal
yeah,
a
he did.
number of years ago,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
he did try to lead a peace deal. I think that was 2 years ago. He tried to lead a peace deal, and he was nodding and said that that they might find a way to do this in a couple of weeks, and
Well,
I don't. I mean,
what else he
that's
can
just what
say?
they say, right?
He
So
hopes for that, but you know, because we have 2 very strong and strange personalities now at the play, Putin and Trump.
yeah,
And from one hand, it's good, like we thought it's good because Trump can understand Putin better and kind of play with him.
yeah.
But on the other hand, we start to get mixed signals that really worrying that it looks like it's not the play that he really believes.
Yeah, and I think
believes
like I mean, I think that and I think that's why Macron is there to say the Europeans, because it affects the Europeans the most, right? Like
Yeah.
they want to be at the table, and Zelensky says obviously he needs to be at the table, right? Because he represents the Ukrainian people, because they're actually negotiating about Ukraine.
Yeah, but the problem is that Putin does not want. He hates Zelensky and he does not want him to be at the table. So I can understand why this two-way negotiation can take place. Because if it's three-way, then Putin can just kind of say no, not interested, right? So it does not matter what people say, as long as it brokers the peace and on normal conditions. And the best condition we see at this point is just, you know, like what happened between South Korea and North Korea, or in Germany between East and West, right? Just no peace, no agreement that this is permanent new border or something. Just let's fix it, and then we hope the power in Russia will change.
Right.
Putin will die, and he will die sooner or later, right?
Well, the
Hopefully sooner.
The clock, you cannot cheat the clock.
Exactly, right? And then with more democratic and better power in Russia, we can renegotiate, and you know, that's the way too. And Ukrainians are leaning to this way from previous "we will win" and "we will be in Moscow soon." Yeah.
And I'm sure this young man here that's 17 years old is hoping for peace, right? Before he has to go and
Of course, and
offer his life up for it.
so many people here have problems, yeah, and what I mentioned before about this immigration policy and not letting people get their.
You can help in that regard too. If you're listening, you can write letters to your MPs and to Chrystia Freeland. Like, she's a friend of Ukraine. She's Ukrainian. right? And then say
Yeah.
like, well, how can this be happening right now?
Yeah. Well, our group, Kelowna Stands With Ukraine, there we publish only true information, no rumors, nothing like that. And as soon as we have petition in this regard, what we just mentioned, it will be published there, the link, and only Canadian citizens can sign it. So your help will be highly appreciated. We hope to get support all over Canada to resolve this.
We thank you for coming in. This is our second interview. We do have Kate coming in.
Yes.
And she's part of,
In 3 hours, yeah.
yeah, Kate's coming in and with somebody else, I think, too. And
Yeah.
And
That's
what organization are they with?
So that's our kind of spin-off organization. That's organization that will be completely focused on humanitarian needs,
yeah.
and they applied for CRA status as a charity.
Okay.
Yeah. So the goal is to help Ukrainians here, help Ukrainians in Ukraine. We are more focused, as we started 3 years ago when the war was just started. We were focused more on military aid, helping Ukraine to survive by supplying body armor. We sent 2 trucks to Ukraine. We're getting ready the 3rd one to the front line, and helping Ukrainians that come here. But now we just want to have charitable status. But Kelowna Stands With Ukraine could not get charitable status because we helped military.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, do 5 o'clock, City Hall.
Please.
They would appreciate it. And we do thank you.
That's very important for us.
We do thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
Thank you.
Report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.